we got to take a trip down to Sin City and visit the Silver and Black. Yes, I'm talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. For the Raiders, obviously going into 2022, they were coming off one of the most interesting seasons in 2021, in my opinion at least. You had the John Gruden email leaks and then the Henry Ruggs arrest/release affecting the team on all fronts mid-season, physically, emotionally, mentally. And then interim head coach Rich Bisaccia rallies the troops. They win 4 straight games to make the playoffs, including that crazy ending to the whole season last year. And they actually managed to nearly upset Joe Burrow and the Bengals in the first round of the AFC playoffs. Sure, they didn't win the game, but you saw how motivated they were to like try and win that game against Cincinnati. But Rich Bisaccia wasn't retained. He wasn't promoted as the permanent head coach. So Mark Davis elected to hire Josh McDaniels as the newest head coach of the Raiders during the last offseason. And, at the time, it seemed like a fine decision. Perhaps maybe he could get the best out of quarterback Derek Carr, who's had a lot of limitations in his decade of being in the NFL. And along with bringing along Josh McDaniels, you're bringing in a new general manager and Dave Ziegler, who got feisty in free agency. You're bringing a linebacker from Arizona in free agency in Chandler Jones. And you make this massive trade to bolster the offense that was kind of missing that number one receiver. And you do so by getting a big piece in the Green Bay Packers receiver, Davante Adams. You steal him away. You snatch him away from Green Bay. You snatch away Aaron Rodgers' big weapon, and you reunite him with his college weapon, his college guy, Derek Carr. So you all of a sudden have an offense that has Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, and Darren Waller. It seemed like a pretty good offense that could be a problem in the AFC West. The only question that had to be answered was, well, could Derek Carr take advantage of that offense? And, well, a lot of that was not necessarily answered throughout the 2022 season. And to be honest with you, the Raiders, you saw flashes of how well the offense could be at times, except they just couldn't get out of their own way for a good bunch of it. You start the season having a shaky outing against the LA Chargers, and you have a solid home opener against the Arizona Cardinals, but then it turns into a complete disaster because you choke away a sizable 20-0 lead, and then you lose 29-23 in overtime in what served to be what was to come for Josh McDaniels' Raiders. So, yeah, that overtime loss where they were up 20-0 against Arizona, it was not good. It was not good. A lot of bad management by McDaniels, a lot of conservative calling, and unfortunately, there was a lot of it. And it ended up being more of that. So the Raiders started 0-3. They managed to beat Denver because Denver sucks in week 4 in a game where Josh McDaniels seemed to have figured out his offensive game plan. Feed Josh Jacobs. Because honestly, 4 weeks in, Derek Carr wasn't, not really lighting the world on fire. But despite the new game plan, the choking continued. They blew double-digit leads to the Chiefs and the Jaguars. Sandwiched in between those losses were a shutout loss in New Orleans and an embarrassment at the hands of Jeff Saturday's Colts in his first ever game. Mid-season, mind you. Like, it doesn't get any more embarrassing for the Silver and Black, And by that point, they were 2-7. And a good amount of that was, because Josh McDaniels couldn't really take advantage. He couldn't really game plan around his offense. He really couldn't get the best out of Derek Carr. And, Derek Carr, he also couldn't really, figure out the defenses. He couldn't really get aggressive like he did in the later half of the 2021 season. So the Raiders made one last desperate attempt at a wildcard berth, winning their next 4 or 5 games. but it was kind of too little too late by that point. And the last victory, I think it was like week 15, it was pretty much gifted to them because that was primarily to Jacoby Myers being a dumbass and literally battling a ball back to Chandler Jones. And we all remember how that went. We all remember how that went against the Patriots. Unfortunately for Las Vegas, they rode the high of that luck too much. They lost another winnable game against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Eve. And then that's when the Raiders decided that, you know what? We're going to shut down Derek Carr. We're going to shut down Derek Carr. We finally had enough of him. Maybe a little too late for that, despite giving him a big fat contract. But hey, I guess better late than never, I guess. So they would end the season 6-11, and then the inevitable would come to fruition 2 days after the Super Bowl, after Derek Carr absolutely refused a trade anywhere. And the Raiders would release Derek Carr before a big chunk of money of guarantees would kick in. So, yeah, for the Raiders, it was absolutely a disappointing season after a kind of inspiring season from the year prior. So where did things go wrong for Las Vegas? Well, they blew at least 5 double-digit leads this past season, and they lost a lot of one-score games. Like I said, primarily due to how conservative and how complacent Josh McDaniels' play calling was. After they got up to such a big lead, like, you have to keep scoring. You have to keep attacking. Yes, Derek Carr is pretty limited. He keeps deferring to the check down. He kind of was also missing like Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller for half of the year with serious injuries. But still, you have your top weapon in Davante Adams, and he couldn't really take advantage of that. But at the same time, it's like Josh McDaniels was really complacent with his calls when they were up so big. And yeah, going back to Derek Carr, yeah, he turned it over more and more as well. He threw it less as well. And he completed less of his passes. So for Derek, he'll probably get a starting job elsewhere on a team that's really desperate to get a quarterback. But I really hope teams realize that he's going to have to earn his payday. I really do. But on a positive note, I guess, you had edge rusher Max Crosby and Josh Jacobs had Pro Bowl type years. Josh Jacobs, at least for this year, he showed that he can be a quality back when he's healthy and paid as such. But who knows? Just hope that the Raiders don't overpay him. But overall, though, I mean, it can't be understated that coming off an inspiring late season run from last season, it was followed up with a disappointing campaign in this one. So for the Raiders, after you release Derek Carr, you got a shit ton of money to work with. You have around like $46 million at the time of this recording. Maybe they'll get even more if they either restructure some contracts, if they can, or you release some other players as well. And then you hold the 7th overall pick in the NFL draft. So maybe maybe in an ideal spot to get a quarterback, whichever one's the best one, or maybe you make a trade up with the Bears or whoever to get the guy you want, the best one out there. But you do have to make some key decisions on who you want to keep around, because you do have a couple of unrestricted free agents, especially Josh Jacobs. Since you didn't pick up his 5th-year option, you do have to sign him to a big fat contract if they want to. That's the thing, if they want to. And then there are some other like key free agents like Matt Collins, Jermaine Ilunimore, if I'm pronouncing that right, Foster Moreau, Rock Yassin, and even backup quarterback Jared Stidham. I mean, are they going to keep him around? That's something to answer as well. Obviously, the biggest thing to address in this offseason is getting a quarterback. I do think that using that 7th overall pick, or maybe even higher, is where the Raiders need to use that pick to get a quarterback. Like I said, It could be anybody. Just as long as Dave Ziegler scouts well and gets that right quarterback. They need to use whatever pick they need in the top 10, whether it's at 7 or if they trade up to go get their guy, to draft the best remaining quarterback prospect. And then you do have to beef up the interior defensive line to support Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, because outside of those two on the edge, there wasn't really much help in the interior in terms of the pass rush. So, now that both the Raiders and Derek Carr have gone their separate ways, the Raiders kind of have to nail most, if not all, this offseason. Like I said, they have a good amount of cap space. They have a high draft pick. It's just a matter if Mark Davis and Dave Ziegler really are interested in, going and getting a really good quarterback prospect in this draft. If not, then, well, there are QB options in the free agency market. It's just a matter of picking the right one. Now, there are some speculators out there that are saying like, oh, let's have the Raiders go and get Aaron Rodgers. It's like, does Aaron Rodgers really want to play in Las Vegas? Even with his buddy Davante Adams there? Really? I don't know. So, the Raiders have to at least get the quarterback position right, whether it's in free agency or in the draft. I personally think it's the draft. But if they can't get that part right, then why even take a gamble in Sin City if you're an NFL player? I'm just saying.